Hey guys, Apex Season 14 is here, and I'm ready to give you my no-holds-barred weapons tier list. If you disagree with this list in any way, shape, or form, you are welcome to confine me on any of my social media platforms, and I will gladly debate you into the ground. First up in my D tier, I have the P2020. Of course, the P2020 is in the D tier. It's a very basic pistol weapon, and it's just not good, and you're going to drop it right away. You should be dropping this gun right away. If you're running around the map with the P2020, guys, you're just wrong. I know some of you guys are already saying, I can kill people with the P2020, I can shred with the P2020. You can't. You're lying to yourself. You're just flat out wrong. You may pick it up on drop and be able to kill someone who wants to box you, which, by the way, is incredibly disrespectful, but I get it. You're here to win the game. P2020 is a gun to drop as soon as possible. D tier, it stays. Next up in my D tier is the L-Star. This is a dumpster fire of a gun, guys. The L-Star got a little bit of a buff this season with increased projectile speed, but it's still just an absolute garbage gun. Drop it as soon as you can. Again, another gun you may pick up on drop and be able to kill a couple people with, but get rid of this gun as soon as possible. The L-Star will serve you nothing more than pain. D tier, it stays. Guys, next up we have the C tier, and the first gun I've got in C tier is the Devotion. Another gun that I think is an absolute dumpster fire. This gun has very little accuracy with increased hip fire spread in all SMGs and assault rifles. This is just a gun you're going to want to drop pretty fast. I may pick it up on drop, maybe get a kill or two, but I'm going to pick up a different gun pretty dang fast, guys. Unless you've got a barrel stabilizer and a turbocharger, this gun is just not worth keeping. And even with those two attachments, I just feel like it gets outclassed in most situations. So C tier is where it will stay. Next up in my C tier, I have the RE45. I know the gun's a good gun, guys. I use it from time to time. I'll even run it into the mid-game, but with this gun going into the crafter, I just can't see this going any farther than being in C tier. I feel like it still gets outclassed by other pistols, other SMGs. There's so many other guns in the game that are working much better than this RE45 that don't cost you crafting materials. Increased strafe speed on the RE45 this season is going to have some people saying, it should be higher than that. Well, I disagree with you. Come at me. RE45, C tier. Finally, the last gun in my C tier, I'm probably going to get some flack for, and that's okay. Come at me, bro. The Sentinel I have in C tier. Guys, I know it does the damage. I get it, and it's so satisfying getting those shots, but it doesn't carry enough ammo. It takes way too long to get those shots off, and I just feel like it's way too dang loud, and with a map like Kings Canyon, you're getting third-partied every chance you get. Sentinel's going to have to stay in C tier for me. If you disagree, well, I'm sorry. Next up, we have the B tier, and the first B tier weapon I've got on here is the Triple Take. Guys, this is an okay gun to run in mid-game situations, and I feel like it can also double as a shotgun if you hip fire it right. However, the gun just has other options out there, man. With the 30-30 and the G7 there, the Triple Take is just kind of at the bottom of that list. On top of that, you gotta wait for it to charge the choke, and then energy ammo is just always a pain in the ass to find, and especially in Kings Canyon, where loot is much harder to find right now, the Triple Take is just going to have to stay in B tier for me. Next in my B tier, I have the Alternator. Again, another gun that works in mid-game situations, but I feel as you get farther into the game, you're going to want to pick up a different gun. Alternator's slow rate of fire kind of holds it back for me a little bit, although accuracy is great, and I feel like damage output's pretty dang good. But again, slow rate of fire, there are better SMG options out there. Alternator stays in my B tier. Next up, we have the Mozambique. Guys, the Mozambique has been knocked down to the worst shotgun in the game now that the EVA 8 has gotten a significant little buff this season. The Mozambique works great. The slow projectile speed, because it's still a pistol, holds it back. And then damage output just isn't quite there for me. Yes, you can get the hammer points on it. You can deal significant damage, but you gotta break their shields first, right? Mozambique is just kind of not there for me this season. It's going to have to stay in B tier. Next up, we have the Hemlock. This burst rifle weapon was okay last season. I feel like it's been knocked down again with the meta changing a little bit to more long range. Again, other long range options out there that work better than the Hemlock. Hip fire is pretty good up close, but again, better options out there. Hemlock works well in mid-game situations. You're going to want to drop this gun for a different one pretty fast, so it's going to have to stay in B tier for me. Next up is another gun I'm probably going to get some flack for, and that's okay, guys. Come at me. The car. The car has had quite a bit of a significant, I'm going to call a shadow nerf of sorts, without it being able to hold any barrel stabilizer or even the brand new laser sight. On top of SMG bloom and bullet spread getting increased this season, the car has just become a less reliable weapon in almost every situation. You're going to, without the laser sight attachment that other SMGs are able to attach, this gun just doesn't meet up to the expectations that it had last season. Other options out there that can do the job of the car even better. It's going to have to stay in the B tier. Speaking of guns that do the car's job better, we have the Prowler. Guys, the Prowler is absolutely devastating up close and personal when every single one of those burst fire hits. These small little hallways inside a building, it can absolutely shred into an enemy team, especially if you add that purple laser sight to it. Where the Prowler starts to fall short for me is if you start getting a little bit of distance between you and your enemy, that accuracy starts going down. You're going to have to hit all of those burst fire shots to get it going, and if an enemy is running away, you're going to have a hard time getting that. Unless you are only using the Prowler in the firing range, it's a gun you're probably going to want to replace pretty fast. Stays in B tier for me. Next up in my B tier, I have the Havoc, guys. The Havoc is a much more accurate weapon than the Devotion, which is why it's staying in my B tier and not in C tier like the Devo. However, the Havoc still runs into problems, needing that turbocharger to be super effective. If you don't have that turbocharger and are not pre-revving every single corner against another enemy, you're gonna lose these fights pretty fast. The Havoc is another gun I want to drop pretty fast. Works well in mid-game situations, but again, dropping it for another one pretty fast, guys. Havoc is staying in my B tier. Rounding out my B tier, another gun you guys are probably going to be upset about, but this is my list and not yours. R99 is in my B tier this season. With the increased bullet spread coming to all SMGs and assault rifles, the R99 just doesn't have it for me anymore. You're going to have to, again, get up close and personal with this gun, and there are other guns that do the job better. R99 is a great gun to hold attachments and do some damage, but again, another gun I'm going to want to drop pretty fast. R99, last gun in our B tier. Next up, I have the A tier weapons. These are weapons you're going to want to pick up and probably hold on to through the entirety of the game. First up, we have the PK, or Peacekeeper for you noobs. Guys, the PK is still a devastating weapon up close and personal, and from some little bit of distance, right? The PK is a huge damage output gun, still a great shotgun. However, it has taken a notch down a little bit this season with the EVA 8 getting its buff, which we'll talk about here in a minute. PK still a very solid shotgun to hold on to. Grab it, do some damage, get your dub. And speak of the devil here, we have the newly buffed EVA 8. Guys, the EVA 8 is definitely a gun you're going to want to pick up this season with double tap back and with increased damage. This gun is worth the pickup. Serious damage output, especially with that double tap. The PK is still a super reliable option. However, these two guns have totally different playstyles. PK is hide and peek, hide and peek. EVA 8 is slam in your face. EVA 8 is a great gun to pick up. Again, get that damage output and get the dub. Next up in our A tier is the newly reworked Wingman. Yes, I am very aware that this Wingman now weirdly takes sniper ammo, but that does not change the gun very much. It still does massive damage, and with the added Skull Piercer attachment to this season, this gun is still a huge, huge game changer. On a side note, guys, when the Wingman lost the Skull Piercer in the previous seasons, they buffed its headshot damage. When they brought the Skull Piercer back, they did not change that headshot damage, so it does even more damage with the Skull Piercer than it did when it first came out. This gun is absolutely insane. Yeah, you probably can't just aim and spray anymore because you're going to have less ammo to work with now that it uses sniper ammo, but man, this thing still hits hard. It is still a game changer. Pick it up, do the damage, get the dub. Next up in A tier, I'm Irish now. Next up in the A tier, I have the longbow, guys. I know some of you are already complaining in the comments. I can hear you now. The Sentinel is not a better gun than the longbow. The longbow does more damage per second. You have more room for mistakes. The longbow is the better sniper this season. I don't care how good you are with that Sentinel. The longbow will outwork you if the sniper on the other side of that aisle is of similar skill. The longbow stays in my A tier, well above the Sentinel. Take it. Next up on my A tier is one of my favorite guns, is the 30-30 repeater. Guys, I know some of you are already hating on me. That's okay. The 30-30 repeater is a superior gun to most guns in the game. With its dual loader integration now no longer needing a hop up, the 30-30 does way more damage output than it has in the past. On top of that, we have added Skull Piercer to the game, so as long as you can hit your headshots, you're going to do even more damage. 3-2-1ing opponents is going to be super simple this season with the 30-30. Pick it up, do the damage, and get your dub. Next up in my A tier, I have the Spitfire. It had a minor change this season, switching over to light ammo, but for the record, for those of you that do not know, it does not matter what kind of ammo this gun has. The damage output is the same. It's a computer program, guys. It doesn't work like that. The Spitfire does massive damage output. The only downside of the Spitfire this season is they have increased the barrel climb on, the vertical barrel climb on recoil, but it's still a huge damage output gun. This is a gun you're going to want to pick up and hold on to. That's the Spitfire in A tier. Next up in the A tier is the Bocek. I know, it's a red weapon. I get it. But the Bocek just does not live up to what a red weapon should be for me. Without being able to get more ammo for this gun and having a huge skill gap of needing to be incredibly accurate with it, the Bocek just does not quite live up to for me. Bocek still is a great weapon in the right hands, and if you're going to hold on to it, yeah, if you can rock the Bocek, hold on to that sucker for sure. But for most people, the Bocek is not going to be a viable option. So A tier is where it's going to have to stay. Next up in my A tier, I have the Rampage. And guys, I'm aware it's a red weapon. I get it. I'm not colorblind. I understand the Rampage is a red weapon. However, it is just not S tier for me. Yes, it comes with a thermite, but then after that, you're going to have to go find them yourself. It requires way less accuracy than the Bocek does, and yeah, it does a ton of damage, but guys, the Rampage is just not quite there for me. After you lose that thermite, you're going to need increased accuracy, and then the Rampage's bullet speed is just too slow to be super effective from longer ranges. Rampage is going to have to stay in A tier for me. It's red. Maybe it'll go into S tier later on in the season for me, but right now it's staying in A tier. Next up in the A tier is another weapon that I know people love to death, is the 301. This is a gun you might want to pick up and hold on to for the entirety of the game. This gun is incredibly accurate. It does enough damage to get by with the speed of the rate of fire that this gun has. 301's a great one to pick up. It does get outpowered out by the flatline that we'll talk about here in a minute, but the 301 in terms of accuracy is a much stronger weapon. 301, pick it up, hold on to it, win your games. A tier. And speaking of rounding out our A tier is the Flatline. Guys, the Flatline is a gun that hits like an absolute truck. However, it does miss out on one major component. It has absolutely awful accuracy at longer ranges. Yeah, I know some people are like, you can jitter aim or whatever the hell that thing is called. Guys, I'm not that level. Most people are not. We don't have time to practice that. Flatline is just not the gun that the R301 is, but it does hit harder. So for those mid to mid-ish long range situations, a Flatline is a great pick. Lots of damage. Pick it up, run those other teams over, and get your dub. Next up, guys, we have our S tier. These are the guns that are above the rest. These are the guns that do the damage, get the dubs, and annoy the hell out of your opponents. First up, we have the Charge Rifle. Speaking of annoying your opponents, guys, the Charge Rifle, I get it. Some of you are already complaining the Charge Rifle is a new weapon. Well, guess what? This game is about winning, not about your feelings, guys. The Charge Rifle is the only gun in the game that is an absolute hit scan, never misses as long as you're on your target, and it can do some massive damage from incredibly long ranges. Not having to worry about bullet drop and just being able to beam someone from across the map. This is how you get your dubs, guys. We are not playing fair in Apex. Charge Rifle, S tier. Next up in my S tier is one that came way out of left field for me so far. We'll see how the season plays out, but right now I've got the G7 Scout up in S tier. This gun just does so much damage with the super high fire rate compared to the 30-30, with its longer ranges going on, and with double tap added. The G7 is an absolute game changer for you and your squad. Massive damage, massive range. Get the G7 Scout in my S tier. Next up, guys, is another weapon that's just going to annoy the crap out of your opponents, the Kraber. Yes, the Kraber got a nerf last season. I'm aware. I remember. I read the patch notes. But the Kraber is still a beast of a weapon. It is still going to take your enemies down in one shot with the right hit, and with no purple helmet. The Kraber is a killer of a weapon. With Kings Canyon having less loot than normal, more and more people are not going to have that purple helmet. This is the gun you're going to want to do to change the tide of battle. Pick that Kraber up, guys, and get your dub. Another S tier weapon we have on the list is the Mastiff, another red crate weapon that you're going to want to pick up, guys. It got a small nerf this season, but this still is a gun that cannot be outmatched. Mastiff does massive damage up close. It is very, very dangerous in the right hands. Pick that Mastiff up, do your freaking damage, and get your freaking dub. Rounding out our S tier for the season is the Volt, guys. This one came out of left field. I figured it would land back in around A tier, but man, this gun is the go-to SMG for me this season. The incredibly fast fire rate, the incredibly large DPS, and with the magazine size being untouched for some reason, because I guess Respawn was asleep at the wheel during the patch notes, the Volt is a huge SMG to pick up. Grab it, get that damage in, and get your dub. That is my tier list for Season 14, 1 week in. I have some learning to do, like we all do. This may change around, it may not. Who knows? Guys, let me know how things are going for you in Season 14. What's your favorite gun to pick up? Is my tier list accurate, or do you absolutely hate it? Let me know in the comments. We'll see you next time.